Folks, welcome back to So Bad It's Good. This is part two of our Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni dissection of all of the accusations against Justin Baldoni. Really fascinating look at pop culture at large and how PR strategies or smear campaigns work. This is not necessarily. It's not the first time any of these tactics have been used, and I doubt it will be the last, but hopefully some good will come from this where you can't try to completely destroy somebody's reputation because you have a feeling they might unfollow you on Instagram or not do press interviews with you on a red carpet. So the first part of this, we went over the New York Times article that started the whole thing off, but now let's get into the 80-page complaint that Blake Lively, the plaintiff, has filed. Now, this is the opening salvo in a potential lawsuit that is definitely coming, and there have been a lot of lawsuits now between like the PR people that have happened since then. I mean, the story is kind of snowballing, and it'll be interesting to see how. I mean, talk about PR crisis strategy you need now, Justin Baldoni, of trying to suppress as much information as possible out there, right? I said before, I thought Christmas was a brilliant time to release this on Blake Lively's part because everybody was paying attention. But can they keep this up in the second week? We're now a week and a day into all of this being revealed. Will this completely go away by New Year's? No, there's no way it will, because things will keep getting added to it. And by the time Hollywood really gets up and running by the second week of January, I think you're going to see a lot more coming out from this in the next couple of months. So I believe this is just beginning. The Daily Mail, who we spoke about in the first part of this episode, has already done an article saying that Justin Baldoni is preparing his response and is going to be firing back bigly, let's use the word bigly, at Blake Lively. So, by the way, I just wish Justin Baldoni at this point would just lay down, but I do not think that is going to happen. Now, this is a very large legal document, nearly 80 pages. Blake Lively, the plaintiff, against Wayfarer Studios. That's the studio with that Justin Baldoni has with Jamie Heath and Steve Sarowitz. Steve Sarowitz is the billionaire who we spoke about in the first episode. It's also against Melissa Nathan, who is one of the PR people. It's also against Jennifer Abel, who is one of the PR people. It's against Jed Wallace, who was the person we spoke about that they reached out to that does coordinated kind of I don't want to say attack campaigns, but that's what the New York Times alleged. So it's against all of these people and their respective companies. So the complaint for damages in this, there are 10 counts here. 1 for sexual harassment, 1 for retaliation, 1 for failure to investigate, prevent, and or remedy harassment, 1 for retaliation, 1 for aiding and abetting harassment and retaliation, 1 for breach of contract, 1 for intentional infliction of emotional distress, 1 for negligence, 1 for false light invasion of privacy, and 1 for interference with prospective economic advantage. So it's 10 counts that this covers. I mean, if you thought the Baldoni thing was a smear campaign against Blake, this is a full-on fucking nuclear bomb that Blake is throwing off. And by the way, if you read the complaint, very warranted. Because as we talked about in the first part, Wayfarer and Baldoni and Heath and Sarowitz were all warned. So the introduction, I love how legal paperwork, these documents are made. They always start off with like this big opening paragraph. And the introduction here says, on January 4th, 2024, prior to resuming filming of It Ends With Us, following guild strike, an all-hands meeting was convened to address the hostile work environment that had nearly derailed production of the film. So you guys, in the eventual movie that they're going to make of this is where the movie starts. This all-hands meeting, right? So attendees of this meeting in person included Justin Baldoni, Jamie Heath, the chief executive officer of Wayfarer and one of the producers on the film, Ange Giannetti, the film's representative for its distributor, Sony Pictures. Remember, Wayfarer is the studio, Sony Pictures is the distributor, and Sony Pictures is not named in this legal paperwork as somebody that Blake is against. And I think that's an important fact as well. Alex Sachs, a producer of the film. Todd Black, a producer on the film. Blake Lively, who was there. Miss Lively also had the agreed upon right to have a representative present. And guess who she chose, folks? That's right. Her husband, Ryan Reynolds, was at that meeting, given that it was about repeated sexual harassment and other disturbing behavior by Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath. Now, remember, Ryan is her husband and also is somebody that's been in the entertainment industry for, I think, near 3 decades now. So he knows his way around set. So he was there with Blake. As discussed in the details below, Miss Lively was forced to address concerns about Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath's misconduct with them directly and began doing so months before filming began. The concerns she raised were not only for herself, but for the other female cast and crew, some of whom had also spoken up. So remember also, other people worked on this film, and other people have expressed concerns about Justin and Jamie. The January 4th meeting occurred only after Wayfarer had rebuffed Miss Lively's efforts repeatedly. During the January 4th meeting, the parties discussed in detail the inappropriate conduct that Miss Lively, her employees, and other cast and crew experienced at the hands of Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath. After the list below was reviewed and discussed in its entirety, all parties present agreed that the outlined conduct would cease. And it goes on to outline. You guys ready for this? It's 30 points on this outline. Get a beverage, get a snack. Here we go. 1, no more showing nude videos or images of women, including producer's wife, to Blake Lively and or her employees. 2, no more mention of Mr. Baldoni's or Mr. Heath's previous pornography addiction or Blake Lively's lack of pornography consumption to Blake Lively or to other crew members. Wow. Now, Mr. Baldoni has been on record talking about his pornography addiction in the past, but also it's been brought up in a way that he has been proud of it, that he had worked through it, but also, you know, when he had talked about it in the past, saying that it was such a horrible thing because you can be with somebody that you completely love and you have these graphic images in your head and the human mind is so weird and da-da-da-da. 3, no more discussions to Blake Lively and or her employees about personal experiences with sex, including as it relates to spouses or others. No more mention to BL, that's Blake Lively, or her employees of personal times that physical consent was not given in sexual acts as either the abuser or the abused. So those first 4, already wild. And what I imagine in the defense of this, that Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath will say this is artistic license about making a movie about these topics, right? But once Blake had expressed that this was not okay, it should have ended completely. 5, no more descriptions of their own genitalia to Blake Lively. 6, no more jokes or disparaging comments to be made to BL about HR complaints Wayfarer has already received on set or about missing the HR meeting. 7, no more inquiries by Mr. Baldoni to BL trainer without her knowledge or consent to disclose her weight. 8, no more mention by Mr. Baldoni of him speaking to Blake Lively's dead father. 9, no more pressing by Mr. Baldoni for BL to disclose her religious beliefs or unsolicited sharing of his. 10, if BL and her infant is exposed to COVID again, BL must be provided with immediate notice as soon as Wayfarer or any other producers became aware of such exposure without her needing to uncover days later herself. 11, an intimacy coordinator must be present at all times when BL is on set and scenes with Mr. Baldoni. Now, intimacy coordinators, you guys already might be aware, it is I think it's a fairly new field that is necessary in this day and age, where it's somebody that helps choreograph, that makes sure the people in these intimate scenes are comfortable. You know, it's not like the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. This is not Basic Instinct anymore. This is, where, you have the director and like, I'm going to grab you here. This is all, an intimacy coordinator is necessary for scenes of this magnitude in this day and age. 12, no more personal physical touching of or sexual comments by Mr. Baldoni or Mr. Heath to be tolerated by BL, as well as any female cast or crew without their express consent. Now, some of these, is detailed in the complaint below, but I'm so curious about more of the other employees on set and the other female cast and more stories from them as well, which I think are coming. 13, no more improvising of kissing. All intimate touch must be choreographed in advance with BL and an intimacy coordinator. No biting or sucking of lip without BL consent. And all intimate on-camera touch and conversations must be in character, not spoken from Mr. Baldoni to BL personally. Now, this kind of files in with what I was talking about in the first episode about actors being actory and, like, oh, I felt this. And I just, in the moment, I felt like I should kiss your lip. And that's what, this has got to be choreographed. So it's a whole added layer of protection for somebody that feels uncomfortable. 14, BL to have a representative on set at all times with a monitor during scenes involving nudity, sexual activity, or violence with Mr. Baldoni. 15, all actors participating with BL in intimate scenes involving her being in any state of nudity or simulated nudity must be classified as active working actors, not friends of the director or producers, and must be pre-approved by BL. So this is an interesting one too, because you would imagine Justin Baldoni being in this industry for so long himself. They have a lot of friends that, like, yeah, I'm going to get you a part on this film. Or going to, like Blake wants these to be professional actors, right? 16, no more filming of any BL nudity without a fully executed SAG, that's the Screen Actors Guild, compliant nudity rider in place. Any such footage already shot with this rider in place and in direct violation of SAG requirements may not be used without BL's and her legal representative's prior written consent. 17, any scene by BL or another performer depicted the character of Lily, that's her character in the film, that involves nudity, I sneezed, or simulated sex must be conducted strictly in accordance with the above referenced nudity rider and must adhere to the BL approved script. 18, an intimacy coordinator must be on set for all scenes involving nudity and or simulated sex and must have a monitor to ensure compliance. 19, no monitors to be viewed or accessible on set or remotely during closed set scenes except by BL approved. So it's mainly saying, I don't want the essential crew and people making the film can be there, but I don't want visitors on set. I don't want just like random, the people doing the catering truck to be able to watch me in a nude scene. I don't feel comfortable with that. 19, no monitors to be viewed or accessible on set or remotely during closed set scenes. 20, no more entering, attempting to enter, interrupting, pressuring, or asking BL to enter her trailer or the makeup trailer by Mr. Heath or Mr. Baldoni while she is nude for any reason. 21, no more private multi-hour meetings in BL's trailer with Mr. Baldoni crying with no outside So this paints this picture that there have been many things of Mr. Baldoni in her trailer crying for some reason, which I think he's going to answer back with no, I was pleading for her to do the scene and it was so tension filled, 22, no more pressing by Mr. Baldoni to sage any of BL's employees. Whoa, we're busting out the sage. Are crystals going to be involved next? 23, producer Alex Sachs to be given standard rights, inclusion, and authority per her job description and as represented to BL's when signing on. 24, Sony must have an active daily role in overseeing physical production for the remainder of the film to monitor safety for cast, crew, schedule, logistics, problem solving, and creative. So up to this point, this makes it seem like Wayfarer, the studio, was in charge of all of this. And now she's asking for Sony, the distributor, a very powerful company, to get involved daily. 25, engagement of an experienced producer to supervise the safety of the cast and crew, schedule logistics. 26, engagement of a BL-approved A-list stunt double to perform Lily in scenes with Mr. Baldoni involving rape and or violence. BL to perform only close-up work or work from a BL pre-approved shot list in scenes with Mr. Baldoni involving sexual violence. So a shot list is what directors will put together. So the crew, the cinematographer, all of these people, these are the shots we're getting today. This is the scene. This is the breakdown of shots. So they know how to light it. They know how to staff it. They know what they need. Some people like Steven Spielberg, because he's Steven fucking Spielberg, will come onto the set and go, okay, he'll watch the scene get acted out and go, okay, this is what I want. I want a wide shot over here. We're going to do one close up over here. Then I want to pull further back. Maybe we'll get a crane shot over here. He kind of, from what I've heard and seen in the documentary about his work, he'll now do it he'll watch the scene and then get a filming because the man's a genius. But he's earned that, right? This is Justin Baldoni, who has not earned that, so they need a full set list. It can't be like, oh, I'm inspired to do this. You would think, right? You would think, oh, that's what a director does. He's inspired by things. No, this is all pre-planned. There's storyboards. There's so much work that goes in. That's why crews, people don't realize how crews work so hard. They have all of this stuff to do that people don't even realize. Okay, 25, 26, engagement of a BL approved. Oh, wait, got that. 27, no more adding of sex scenes, oral sex, or on-camera climaxing by BL outside the scope of the script. 28, no more asking or pressuring BL to cross physical picket lines. Remember, there was a writers-actor strike going on at the time. So she must have at some point been asked or hinted to, hey, you can work even though we're on strike, right? No, we can do this. We can do this. Because people are trying to make their days. It's a lot of money, but she does not want to cross the picket line. She is a union person, and good for her. And remember, this was all leading back into getting back into physical production again after the strike. They had shot some, I believe. She was uncomfortable with it. Then they went on strike, and then this meeting took place before she would agree to come back. 29, no more retaliatory or abusive behavior to BL for raising concerns or requesting safeguards. So it's like, you can't threaten me because I want to protect my person and my peace and my reputation. 30, an in-person meeting before production resumes with Mr. Baldoni, Mr. Heath, Miss Sachs, the Sony representative, the new producer, BL, and BL's spouse, Ryan Reynolds, to confirm and approve a plan for implementation of the above that will be adhered to the physical and emotional safety of BL, her employees, and all the cast and crew moving forward, which this is the meeting that is talked about in the opening salvo of this paperwork, this document. Okay. So they said this meeting was an essential step in a process that parties had agreed to several months before to allow the cast and crew to safely resume production of the film. So this is what that meeting was, the all-hands meeting to confirm and approve the plan that I just read from you, those 30 things. And this will be adhered moving forward. So after receiving the document, Wayfarer responded that Wayfarer, Sony, and production respectfully acknowledge that Ms. Lively has concerns regarding safety, professionalism, and workspace culture. Although our perspective differs in many aspects, ensuring a safe environment for all is paramount, irrespective of differing viewpoints regarding your outlying requests. We find most of them not only reasonable, but also essential for the benefit of all parties involved. So, isn't it funny, the stuff that we have no idea that goes into the entertainment that we consume? We had no clue about this specific meeting until the New York Times article and this document. But Wayfarer is saying, we don't agree that this actually happened, but we want everybody to be safe. Like, yeah, this all sounds great. Let's get back to work. At the end of January 4th meeting, having discussed, God, wouldn't you love to hear Ryan Reynolds speak in this meeting? God, could you imagine could you imagine Justin Baldoni looking at Ryan Reynolds? And then Justin Baldoni freaking out when Ryan Reynolds blocked him on Instagram? Reminds me of when Kathy Hilton blocked me on Instagram, which, by the way, good news, folks. Kathy Hilton has unblocked me on Instagram. So thank you, angels. Thank you, Mom. So they all agreed to this, and they wanted to ensure that the film would be finished, completed, marketed, and released safely and successfully. They all want to finish this film and market it and get it out in the world. Leading up to and in connection with the release of the film during the summer, Miss Lively and fellow cast members promoted the film in accordance with the marketing plan, created and delivered by the film distributor Sony, which is summarized in the talking points attached in Exhibit C, which we'll get to, but mainly the talking points were one of the big things that Blake got a lot of blowback from, because she was not talking about survivors of DV or DV. It was more positive and filled with hope and flowers and all of these things. And it was like, how dare you, Blake Lively? But this was an adherence with how Sony wanted the film marketing. Justin Baldoni went rogue and realized the public backlash that Blake Lively was getting, so started making or crafting his campaign of PR around DV, which you would hope they would all just do regardless. But, you know, listen, these people that are giving millions and millions of dollars, they sometimes aren't thinking about the correct way to do things. They're thinking about the thing of, like, what's the best for mass consumption. So one of the marketing plans, they wanted to focus more on Lily's strength and resilience as opposed to describing the film as a story about domestic violence, and to avoid talking about this film that makes it feel sad or heavy. It's a story of hope. God forbid we see something sad or heavy. In the days leading up to the film's release, Mr. Baldoni abruptly pivoted away from the film's marketing plans and the type of publicity activities in which he had previously participated. What the public did not know was that Mr. Baldoni and his team did so in an effort to explain why many of the film's cast and crew had unfollowed Mr. Baldoni on social media and were not appearing with him in public. To that end, he and his team used domestic violence survivor content to protect his public image, as described in further detail below. What's so sad is that you would just hope they would all do this because this is the right thing to do and the right message message to talk about for people that need to hear this, for survivors of DV, for people going through it currently, for people that will go through it. These are important conversations to have, right? So to think somebody would use that as a strategy to then make themselves look good is deeply saddening, because all of a sudden we're now not talking about the movie or the story or the issues at all. We're literally in a game of Succession talking about survival of the fittest, talking about greed is good, talking about I'm going to fuck you over before you fuck me over. What the public also did not know was that this was the beginning of a multi-tiered plan that Mr. Baldoni and his team described as social manipulation, designed to destroy, I'm using quotes when I go destroy, Miss Lively's reputation. The plan was backed by virtually unlimited resources. Wayfarer's co-founder, co-chairman, and leading financier is multi-billionaire Steve Sarowitz, who divulged at the film's New York premiere on August 6th, 2024, that he was prepared to spend $100 million to ruin the lives of Miss Lively and her family. Where did they get this quote from? Who did Steve Sarowitz say this at the premiere that they were able to put this in the document? This billionaire with deep pockets, because people are like, well, Ryan Reynolds, Blake Lively, they're powerhouses. They're like a power couple. You can't go against them. Well, Steve Sarowitz says, fuck that. I'm a billionaire. I'll fuck them. I'm going to fuck with them. The more you learn about life and I guess any industry, it's dark, folks. People are trying to destroy you right and left. With that backing, Mr. Baldoni and his Wayfarer associates embarked on a sophisticated press and digital plan in retaliation for Miss Lively exercising her legally protected right to speak up about their misconduct on the set, with the additional objective of intimidating her and anyone else from revealing in public what actually occurred, which is the important thing, right? Let's not get lost in all of the minutia. That's the important thing. What actually occurred on the set. What's occurring off the set months and months and months later is just wild and fascinating, and everything that we love /hate/loathe about pop culture is the way that it can be served to us and the way that it can manipulate our ways of thinking and our minds. It's really, really, really interesting. What I do want to know is how much these PR people charge. Like, what was the final tally for Steve Sarowitz and Justin Baldoni? Like, how much did these people get paid to do this? I know that doesn't really matter, but in the end of the day, I'm just curious how much it takes to destroy a life. And also, I do want to acknowledge the fact that Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, they are well off, they are fine. But Blake Lively's reputation did take a huge hit. Like, you can acknowledge that at least, right? I mean, I see people still in the comments like, well, Blake Lively did it to herself. Maybe in certain capacities, but guess who put a big old fucking magnifying glass in order to help you think that again and again and again and again? Okay, on July 31st, 2024, I love that it's like back in time, following the recommendation of their publicist, Jennifer Abel, Wayfarer, and Mr. Baldoni, Jennifer Abel, who we talked about in the first part of this episode, and a crisis communication specialist named Melissa Nathan and her company, the Agency Group PR LLC, or TAG, Miss Nathan delivered a proposal to Mr. Baldoni, which included a website to discuss, full Reddit, full social account takedowns, full social crisis team on hand for anything, engage with audiences in the right way, start threads of theories to discuss. This is the way to be fully 100% protected. So this was like the battle plan. This is what we're going to do for you. We're going to give you full Reddit protection, full social account takedowns. We're going to do all of this for you. Miss Nathan also proposed the creation of social fan engagement to go back and forth with any negative accounts, helping to change the narrative and stay on track. So anytime things would start to get maybe heated in towards Justin, they could redirect or misdirect. Per Miss Nathan, all of this will be most importantly untraceable. Jesus Christ. We've got a long way to go, but the way that they discovered all of the way that they got all these emails and text threads is wild. And I'll save that for the big reveal in part 3. As Miss Abel described it, the plan was to engage in social media mitigation and proactive fan posting to counter the negative, as well as social manipulation. Now, for you guys and me, don't you notice this when you're on TikTok doing what you love, just scrolling your stories? And especially if you're on the pop culture side of TikTok, you'll see, or even just the TikTok side of Bravo, right? You'll see one person, let's say, Jack's what's a story that just came out recently? What am I, what do you, it'll be, okay, Sheena. Sheena on Shenanigans this week finally spoke up about DJ James Kennedy and said, listen, my silence was meant to help Allie. I have reached out to Allie multiple times. She had asked in past to help out with James Kennedy. But I was being quiet out of respect for her. And I see that my silence is being taken as support for James Kennedy, which is not the case. So that's that's what Sheena said on Shenanigans, which is excellent, right? And she was getting a lot of flack for not saying anything. She finally says something. And then on TikTok, I see the first, person like, hey, you know what Sheena said on Shenanigans? Da, 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 da. And you're like, oh, okay, that's good. That's good to know. But then I see 30 other individuals, different people doing the same exact story because it's a little negative information. It's a little content to put out there in the world. So now imagine this. It's why you see the same thing again and again and again, because people will take this one thing and run with it. So it's where these things originate from. So if they're putting out the things, we're going to run with it. The people making the content, us little foot soldiers, who we're just trying to create content and maybe make a buck. We deliver these messages and sometimes we don't know what we're delivering. We don't know who we're even trying to help because we just think we're delivering a story. But a lot of the times you're delivering a story that they want to be delivered. You know what I'm saying? Anyways, the plan went well beyond standard crisis PR. What Miss Nathan proposed, including a practice known as, quote, astroturfing, which has been defined as the practice of publishing opinions or comments on the internet in the media that appear to come from ordinary members of the public, but actually come from a particular company or political group. Isn't that great? Isn't that not great? But isn't that wild? Isn't that amazing? It's called astroturfing. So these are people that band together, acting like they're separate people, separate entities, but it's really all coming from the same PR crisis people. But then we read it and wow, there's a lot of people saying really negative things and they're all different people. They all, wow, this is crazy. But that's on purpose. It's called astroturfing. On August 2nd, TAG, the PR group, circulated a scenario planning document to Mr. Baldoni, Mr. Heath, and others, which described preparations and strategy should Miss Lively and her team make her grievances public. So remember, this was all starting just in case Blake did something. Blake was not even yet doing something, but this was all just in case for a rainy day. To get ahead of this narrative, Miss Nathan proposed strategies to advance misleading counter-narratives, including pushing Nathan's narrative that Miss Lively had, quote, less than a favorable reputation, proposing to explore planting stories about the weaponization of feminism and blaming Miss Lively for production members' job losses. So they were literally saying, fuck it, we'll throw in feminism there. We'll say she is negatively weaponizing feminism. We'll turn females against her. And they include a text thread on this from Jamie and Justin Baldoni and Miss Nathan. So we talked about this from the New York Times article, but it's basically morning, not in love with the document they sent, not sure I'm feeling the protection I felt on the call, Justin says. Then she says, this is the first time I've personally gone through scenario planning with them. So I think let's let them discuss the thinking behind the document and the actual process and protocol of how they implement these things. That's the most important part of this, is how quickly they can shut things down and play stories in your favor. Be honest on this call and give the real feedback to each point. And then he writes back, yeah, just feels very much like there is not much defense, and also them feeling strong like she's going to do something just a bit concerning what everyone had originally thought. So they were all like, this she's a live wire. You never know what this crazy lady's going to do. Initially, Mr. Baldoni expressed concerns that TAG's written plan was insufficiently aggressive to protect him. Not hard enough. Writing to Mr. Heath and Miss Abel, he said he was not in love with it. Okay, so this is what we just read. Later that day, Miss Abel and Miss Nathan, the two women, the PR and crisis people, exchanged the following text messages expressing that Mr. Baldoni wants to feel like Miss Lively can be buried. Miss Abel and Miss Nathan agreed that, of course, they They would do just that, but could not say it in writing. We can't write it down to him. We can't write, "We will destroy her." Imagine if a document saying all the things that he wants ends up in the wrong hands. Let's all take a second to chuckle because we are reading the document that eventually got into the, quote, wrong hands or right hands. Miss Nathan followed this by assuring Miss Abel, "You know we can bury anyone, but I can't write that to him. I will. I'll be very tough." A few days later, on August 5th, Mr. Baldoni set the narrative for the social media campaign, sending Miss Abel a screenshot of a thread on X, formerly Twitter, that had accused another female celebrity of bullying women. Mr. Baldoni stated, "This is what we would need." And you guys, it's a negative thing about Hailey Bieber. Hailey Bieber suffered a lot on social media. And you have to wonder, okay, well, maybe, I could see why people might not like Hailey Bieber. But then what if somebody was helping behind the scenes make you really not like Hailey Bieber, or showing you Hailey Bieber things so many times that it starts to affect your perception of Hailey Bieber? So he sent this to them, and she writes, "Yeah, I literally just spoke to Melissa about this on the break about what we discussed last night for Social and Digital. Focus on Reddit, TikTok, IG." So the plan is forming, and Justin is well aware of this. Justin is doing his own research online. And nobody at any point in this yet has been like, you know what? It's a really good movie. Let's just like focus on like the movie, the message. You got through it. Let's just hope for the best. You survived the war of making a film. Miss Abel responded that she had just, with reassurance that Miss Lively would be destroyed and buried, Wayfarer and Mr. Baldoni directed Miss Nathan and her team to actively engage in their retaliatory social manipulation campaign. So they agreed to, let's get going. In the weeks and months that followed, with the direction and approval of Wayfarer and Mr. Baldoni, the team engaged in a sophisticated, coordinated, and well-financed retaliation plan. The retaliation campaign relied on more than just publicists and crisis managers spinning stories. They also retained subcontractors, including a Texas-based contractor named Jed Wallace. We talked about him in the first part, who weaponized a digital army around the country from New York to Los Angeles to create, seed, and promote content that appeared to be authentic on social media platforms and internet chat forums. Oh, God, imagine this is your job. The Baldoni Wayfarer team would then feed pieces of this manufactured content to unwitting reporters, making content go viral in order to influence public opinion and thereby cause an organic pile-on. So they're saying Jed's job was to put the shit out there, and then they'll use that shit to get other reporters on board, using that as actual like fact or things to pull from, and let's just start this avalanche. They engage in the same techniques to bolster Mr. Baldoni's credibility and suppress any negative content about him. So all the while they're trying to take down Blake, they're trying to put positive stories in there about Justin. On August 10th, the day after the release of the film, Miss Nathan's team reported that they had started to see a shift in social due largely to Jed and his team's effort to shift the narrative against Miss Lively. So they're like, it is working. Wanted to send a quick update. The majority of socials are just pro-Justin, and I don't even agree with half of them, LOL. Melissa Nathan wrote to Jennifer Abel. Miss Nathan then bragged to Miss Abel that Mr. Baldoni doesn't realize how lucky he is right now, by which they were referring to their successful efforts to shut down stories that would have revealed how Mr. Baldoni's behavior, including sexual connotations on set, has made cast and crew beyond Miss Lively uncomfortable. Now, these guys, these PR people, are patting themselves on the back. Look how good we are. Like, I don't even know. I mean, maybe it's like, you have to divorce yourself from feeling that Blake's an actual human being and say, we are doing a job and we are doing it damn well. Look at us. Look at us go. I mean, it's wild to think about. So they're on like a victory lap almost. Melissa Nathan to Jennifer Abel, there's a screenshot of a text saying, the whispering in the ear, the sexual connotations, like Jesus fucking Christ. Other members feeling uncomfortable watching it. I mean, there is just so much talking about the allegations against Justin on set. Less than 1 week later, they again bragged about how they had shut down stories regarding HR complaints on set. Melissa Nathan remarked that this went so well, it was genius. So, okay, we have the four majors standing down on HR complaint. On August 16th, Miss Nathan circulated a Daily Mail article entitled "String of Hard-to-Watch Videos That Have Surfaced Following Tone-Deaf Q&A to Promote It Ends with Us Could Tarnish 36-year-old Blake Lively's golden Hollywood image for good." To which Miss Abel responded, "Wow, you really outdid yourself with this piece." And Miss Nathan replied, "That's why you hired me, right? I'm the best." Planted this Daily Mail story with that headline that I'm reading at the time with my popcorn. As their words reveal, the purpose of this social manipulation plan was twofold. It aimed to both conceal the pattern of harassment and other misconduct by Mr. Baldoni, Mr. Heath, and Wayfarer, and B, to retaliate against Miss Lively by battering her image, harming her businesses, and causing her and her family severe emotional harm. Millions of people, including many reporters and influencers who saw these planted stories, social media posts, and other online content, had no idea they were unwitting consumers of a crisis PR, Astroturfing, and digital retaliation campaign created and funded by Mr. Baldoni and Wayfarer to hurt Miss Lively. That is precisely the goal of an Astroturfing campaign, to light the fire and continue to stoke conversations secretly, blurring the line between authentic and manufactured content and creating viral public takedowns. We are living in the Matrix. This is insane. So we're sitting out there reading this shit thinking we're forming our own real opinions. They already know the opinion they want you to form. Everything you read, you got to ask yourself why you're reading, what you're reading, who you're reading, all of that shit nowadays. Think about it. Think about how it can affect political campaigns. I said this on a show last week, I had to finally get off Twitter because I didn't like who I was becoming when I was on Twitter. I didn't like how angry it made me. And then I would look into something that I read and it would be completely fucking fake. And it was just allowed to live there in perpetuity for any unwitting bystander, for my fucking dad to read it, who doesn't know which way is up when he goes on social media. As laid out in the complaint, the Baldoni Wayfarer-led public attack of Miss Lively was the intended result of a carefully crafted coordinate. Okay. As such, it was not only unconscionable, and I don't know how to say that word, and a breach of contract, but also illegal under both state and federal law. Okay. So now we're even moving away from the actual fucking harassment on set from Justin Baldoni to Blake Lively and all the uncomfortableness that went along with that. And now we're moving on to this is not legal what they did under state and federal laws. You're not allowed to do this. Miss Lively brings this action to hold Wayfarer and its leaders, Mr. Baldoni, Mr. Heath, and Mr. Sarowitz, accountable for the ongoing retaliation, threats, and harm they have caused Miss Lively, other cast and crew, and all of their families. Okay, so that is the first 25 paragraphs, and then we go into factual background, that section of the legal document. And it talks about Justin Baldoni and Jamie Heath of Wayfarer engage in inappropriate and unwelcome behavior towards Miss Lively and others on the set of It Ends With Us. Now we go back to the production of the film. They launched Wayfarer Studios, the three of them, in 2020. Mr. Sarowitz, the leading financier. Under the Wayfarer banner, Mr. Baldwin, Mr. Baldoni, and Mr. Heath have many platforms, including the Man Enough podcast, that's Baldoni's podcast, that is through Wayfarer, which they co-host, with a female co-host who just quit this past week. Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath have positioned Wayfarer as a male feminist platform that explores gender roles, dismantles toxic masculinity, and creates a safer and judgment-free society for women. That sounds pretty damn good, right? But also, why wouldn't you have a woman on that one of them? Why don't you make a woman one of the co-chairs if that is your goal? And also, I do want to throw into is that there's a lot of gray. I do still weirdly believe that Mr. Baldoni at some point believed he was doing the right thing. I'm very I don't know, you guys. Keep going back and forth on this. Maybe you can help me. Mr. Baldoni served not only as the co-founder, he also served as director, executive producer, and co-lead actor playing the role of Ryle Kincaid. As studio head and director, all actors, crew, and staff of the film, including Miss Lively, answered to Mr. Baldoni. In his words, he was the leader who sat at the top of the totem pole. These are in quotes, things he said. While Sony was the distributor releasing the film, Wayfarer was responsible for the day-to-day production, and Wayfarer led by Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath. Production of the film began in May 2023 and lasted until it was suspended in mid-June of 2023 due to the W Writers Guild strike, WGA. During that time, Miss Lively and other cast and crew experienced an invasive, unwelcome, unprofessional, and sexually inappropriate behavior by Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath. Because Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath had all leadership positions on production, they answered to no one and brushed off or ignored the concerns Miss Lively and others expressed. Now, I looked at Wayfarer on IMDb, the movie database that Heather Dubrow is a big fan of, myself as well. And they're, they don't have a lot. They have a lot of things in pre-production. I believe also the weirdest one, they have the rights to Miss Pac-Man. Miss Pac-Man is, you do not want a lawsuit from Miss Pac-Man. I'll tell you that. You think Blake Lively's bad. Miss Pac-Man will get you out of there, Baldoni. But I found it interesting is that this was a big deal for them. It ends with us. This is that Sony backed this. Huge deal. Let's see what else Wayfarer has in the hopper here. Well, on companies on IMDb, they're rated 152 because that probably upped their ranking a lot because of all of this shit. In pitch, pitch was when you pitch a product, when you're trying to sell it to a studio. They have Badass Biker Chicks of Marrakesh. Sounds good. Pre-production, Black is Beautiful, the Kwame Brathwaite story. Not Miss Pac, it's just Pac-Man. They have a treatment for Miss Pac-Man, which is like they send off a writer to do a treatment like what you'll see in the film. Their past film and videos, a thing that's completed called Code 3. They were a production company in association with the Garfield movie in 2024. They were the production company on a documentary that I loved on Netflix called Will and Harper with Will Ferrell and his best friend, Harper. I thought it was such a beautiful documentary on Netflix. I loved that one. But, they've only been going since 2020. So this was a big deal. This is like a big thing for Wayfarer. Big studio movie. Mr. Baldoni ignored well-established industry protocols in filming intimate scenes and exploited the lack of controls on set to behave inappropriately. Now, can he argue that he's not that experienced as a film director? Could he argue that? I don't know. Wayfarer failed to adhere to guild rules as well as Ms. Lively's contract and standard industry safety protocols with respect to nudity and intimate scenes. So she was saying about the simulated sex scenes, the nudity, she felt very unsafe. Without these protections in place, Mr. Baldoni, because they didn't have the intimacy coordinators, Mr. Baldoni improvised physical intimacy that had not been rehearsed, choreographed, or discussed with Miss Lively, with no intimacy coordinator involved. For instance, Mr. Baldoni discreetly bit and sucked on Miss Lively's lower lip during a scene which he improvised numerous kisses on each take. Mr. Baldoni insisted on shooting the full scene over and over again, well beyond what would have been required on an ordinary set and without advance notice or consent. So that is alleging that, we need another take. We didn't get it. The lighting wasn't right. I didn't feel it. Did you feel it? I didn't feel it. Keep going in that way made her uncomfortable. On another occasion, Mr. Baldoni and Miss Lively were filming a slow dance scene for a montage in which no sound was recorded. Mr. Baldoni chose to let the camera roll and have them perform the scene, but did not act in character as Ryle. Instead, he spoke to Miss Lively out of character as himself. At one point, he leaned forward and slowly dragged his lips from her ear and down her neck, and he says, "It smells so good." None of this was remotely in character or based on any dialogue in the script, and nothing needed to be said because, again, there was no sound. Mr. Baldoni was caressing Mr. Lively with... Mr. Baldoni was caressing... Oh, they made a mistake in this document. It says Mr. Baldoni was caressing Mr. Lively, but it should be Miss Lively. Did I just... Wow. I'm going to sue. With his mouth in a way that had nothing to do with their roles. When Miss Lively later objected to this behavior, Mr. Baldoni's response was, "I'm not even attracted to you." They screwed up there too. I hate... It's like when I'm reading the Daily Mail and I read spelling mistakes. Damn, you guys, get this right. So basically, what I feel like he's going to argue with this, that it's all acting, that it's a way to get something, this is the way to get the shot. I don't know, you guys. It seems gross. But he even said, "Hey, listen, I'm not trying to hit on you. I'm not even attracted to you." That's what he said to her. Mr. Baldoni inserted improvised gratuitous sexual content and or scenes involving nudity in the film in highly unsettling ways. Now, I have not seen this film, and I don't know when I'm going to, but is there a lot of nudity and sex in this film? It makes it seem like it's all over the place. After Miss Lively signed on to the movie based on a draft of the script, Mr. Baldoni, without Miss Lively's knowledge or consent, personally added graphic content, including a scene in which Miss Lively was to orgasm on camera. When Miss Lively objected to these additions, Mr. Baldoni insisted he had added them because he was making the film through the female gaze. Although he agreed to remove the scenes, he made a last-ditch attempt to keep one in which the couple orgasmed together on their wedding night, which he said was important to him because he and his partner climaxed simultaneously during intercourse. Braggart. Mr. Baldoni then intrusively asked Miss Lively whether she and her husband climaxed simultaneously during intercourse, which Miss Lively found invasive and refused to discuss. Yeah, I don't want to know if Ryan Reynolds climaxes at the same... No, thank you. And also, are we sure that Mr. Baldoni's wife is telling the truth about climaxing simultaneously? Maybe Mr. Baldoni is allegedly being lied to about his wife. So it's basically just, this is wild. So he's fighting for this vision of the film he has, but his vision of the film obviously made Blake really uncomfortable. And, he's asking to share very intimate details, and he's just saying, hey, I'm going to share this and this and this. Why don't you share something with me? On the day of shooting the scene in which Miss Lively's character gives birth, Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath suddenly pressured Miss Lively to simulate full nudity, despite no mention of nudity for this scene in the script, her contract, or in previous creative discussions. Mr. Baldoni insisted to Miss Lively that women give birth naked and that his wife had ripped her clothes off during labor. He claimed it was not normal for women to remain in their hospital gowns while giving birth. Miss Lively disagreed, but felt forced into a compromise that she would be naked from below the chest down. I don't know, man. I've not given birth. I will not be given birth. I mean, I don't know. Do it. It sounds a little wonky to me. I mean, I've seen, I don't know. Ladies, you tell me. Did you rip your gowns off? I don't know. And also, I don't think he knows. Maybe, When the birth scene was filmed, the set was chaotic, crowded, and utterly lacking in standard industry protections for filming nude scenes, such as choreographing the scene, intimacy coordinator. So it's like, hey, improv giving birth, take your clothes off, now improv. So the scene was not broadcast, having signed a nudity rider or simply turning off the monitors so the scene was not broadcast to all the crew on set and their personal phones and iPads, Mr. Heath and Mr. Baldoni also failed to close the set, allowing non-essential crew to pass through while Miss Lively was mostly nude with her legs spread wide in stirrups and only a small piece of fabric covering her genitalia. Among the non-essential persons present that day was Wayfarer co-chairman Mr. Sarowitz, who flew in for one of his few set visits. Miss Lively was not provided with anything to cover herself with between takes until after she had made multiple requests. Miss Lively became even more alarmed when Mr. Baldoni introduced his best friend to play the role of the OBGYN, when ordinarily a small role of this nature would be filled by a local actor. Yeah, I could have done that. Jeez, I'm a professional. Miss Lively felt that the selection of Mr. Baldoni's friend for this intimate role, in which the actor's face and hands were in close proximity to her nearly nude genitalia for a birth scene, was invasive and humiliating. So that's where we get one of those things of like, you can't just have your friend show up on set, that your buddy that you went to high school with, and be like, hey, stare at Blake's hoo-ha and act like you're an OBGYN. And also, we just can't have people wandering through the set and seeing Gossip Girl's hoo-ha. To add insult to injury, Mr. Heath approached Miss Lively and her assistant on set and started playing a video of a fully nude woman with her legs spread apart. Miss Lively thought he was showing her pornography and stopped him. Mr. Heath explained that the video was his wife giving birth. Miss Lively was alarmed and asked Mr. Heath if his wife knew he was sharing the video, to which he replied, she isn't weird about this stuff, as if Miss Lively was weird for not welcoming it. Miss Lively and her assistant excused themselves, stunned that Mr. Heath had shown them a nude video. Oh, man, this is so wild. So put yourself in that situation, right? And don't be like, oh, it's artsy, everybody should be cool with everything. No. Picture that. You're at work. This is Blake's work, Miss Lively's work. This was not like, hey, can I show you a video of my wife? He suddenly whips out his phone and starts like, hey, and it's like a nude woman. And it's like, no, that's my wife. It's all good. Like, what? What are you saying? Kanye got himself in for Kanye got himself a lot of trouble for a lot of different things, but one of them was showing nude photos of Kim Kardashian to employees. And then straight up pornography, not with Kim, but with other people, to his employees at Yeezy. Read those complaints about Kanye. Mr. Baldoni added a detailed scene to the film in which the underage version of Miss Lively's character, Lily, loses her virginity. In both the book and the script for the film, there was no sex scene. Instead, the details about this moment were left to the audience's imagination. But Mr. Baldoni added in considerable details, including both dialogue between young Lily and her boyfriend about the loss of her virginity, as well as a simulated sex scene in which Mr. Baldoni filmed and included in his initial cut of the film, a close-up of young Lily's face accompanied by an audible gasp at the moment of penetration. Ms. Lively was informed that when this scene was shot, after Mr. Baldoni called cut, he walked over to the actors and said, "I know I'm not supposed to say that, but that was hot. And did you two practice this before?" he said. This is tough. Like, I've been in acting situations. It's tough. You know, and I think Mr. Baldoni's defense will be like, I was like fucking directing them, trying to say, no, we got this. Is it's all creepy. I don't know, you guys. But if you add this all into this document, it starts to paint a really disturbing picture. Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath discussed their personal sexual experiences and previous porn addiction and tried to pressure Miss Lively to reveal details about her intimate life. During a car ride with Miss Lively, her assistant and driver, Mr. Baldoni claimed to Miss Lively that he had been sexually abused by a former girlfriend, which he has since shared publicly. At the end of the story, Mr. Baldoni shared that it had caused him to re-examine his past. He then said, "Did I always ask for consent? No. Did I always listen when they said no? No." Mr. Baldoni claimed this was an example of how we all have things from which we can learn and grow. I knew this was going to be the thing where he was like, no, I'm trying to give her an example of how to play the scene and like what we're really doing here. But if you add all those other things into it, it's painting this picture to Miss Lively of somebody that's very dangerous and somebody she doesn't trust. Miss Lively was unsettled by Mr. Baldoni's suggestion that he had engaged in sexual conduct without consent. When Miss Lively exited the car, her driver immediately remarked that he did not want Miss Lively to be alone with Mr. Baldoni going forward. Good driver there. On the first day of production, Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath described their past sexual relationships to Miss Lively, including that one of them used to hook up with a woman. Mr. Baldoni said they had decided the woman wasn't the one. So then Mr. Heath had gotten together with her. So Baldoni was like, I'm done with her. And Heath was like, I'm in. Ms. Lively found this description of passing along a woman to be disrespectful and disturbing. Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath often spoke of their previous pornography addiction. Mr. Baldoni would often reference pornography to Miss Lively, hoping to shut the subject down. She said to him privately that she had never seen it. Later, when Mr. Baldoni was once again referencing his experiences with pornography, he revealed in front of the other cast and crew that Miss Lively had never seen porn. It was an incredible invasion of her privacy to discuss any aspect of her intimate life with the cast and crew, much less reveal something she had only told Mr. Baldoni to try to get him to stop talking about the subject with her. Mr. Baldoni engaged in other behaviors that were shocking and emotionally distressing. For example, he claimed he could speak to the dead. And on several occasions told her that he had spoken to her dead father. See, this is when actors can be too actory, when you're like, oh, like I'm telling you, this is like what I used to see all the time working with actors. When it's like too actory. You're like, we get it. No, you're deep. You're very deep. It was off-putting and a violation for Miss Baldoni to claim a personal relationship. They keep doing Miss. It's Mr. Baldoni. They've made fucking gender mistakes all along here. To claim a personal relationship with her recently deceased father. Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath were also constantly hugging and touching cast and crew. When Miss Lively or others avoided this touching, Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath would retaliate by becoming irritated, cold, and uncollaborative. The result was an unwelcoming and mercurial environment for Miss Lively, her employees, and others on the set. So they would pout. They would pout if they didn't get their way from Miss Lively, right? But also, what kind of insanity? Like, you really have to be very confident in yourself to be like, I contacted your dead even if you did have that ability, wait till the person fucking trusts you before dropping that on him. It's like when my sister gave my dad the When We Die, What Do We Do Now book this Christmas that I told you about in part 1. Like, what? Sorry, Kara. Mr. Baldoni objectified Miss Lively and other women by commenting on or criticizing their bodies as sex objects. Mr. Baldoni often referred to women in the workplace as sexy. When they expressed discomfort, Mr. Baldoni would deflect or try to pass it off, which undermined Miss Lively and others' concerns. For example, on one occasion that Miss Lively observed, he told a female cast member that her leather pants looked sexy when she arrived to the set. When she rebuffed his comment because she was uncomfortable, rather than apologizing, he brushed off with, I can say that because my wife is here today. Miss Lively felt embarrassed witnessing this kind of commentary, as did others. Ooh, gross. Now, these examples go on, and they're really trying to paint the picture of Mr. Baldoni making not just Blake, but other people on set uncomfortable by a lot of things where he would like make Miss Lively uncomfortable for saying, you know, she looked she looked sexy in her onesie, or making her take her coat off in front of the crew. and it just made her feel ogled, the document says. Miss Lively said, this. With another female cast present, she said, "That's not what I'm going for." When he said she looked sexy, Mr. Baldoni responded sarcastically, "I guess I missed the HR meeting," and walked away. Another woman, so it just sounds like they had a real contentious relationship. Another woman on production spoke to Miss Lively afterwards to offer empathy and to share her own similar experiences with Mr. Baldoni, commenting about her in sexual terms. As a result of Mr. Baldoni's behavior, on May 29th, 2023, another cast member lodged a sexual harassment complaint about Mr. Baldoni's gross and unwanted comments towards her and others. So now this is not just Blake. While on one hand, Mr. Baldoni was objectifying Miss Lively as a sex object, on the other hand, he went out of his way to message criticisms of her age, weight, neither of which she could change during filming. On the second day of filming, for example, Mr. Baldoni made the rest of the cast and crew wait for hours while he cried in Miss Lively's dressing room, claiming social media commentators were saying that Miss Lively looked old and unattractive based on paparazzi photos from the set. So he was crying to her about people saying that she looked bad. Gross. She tried to reassure him that she should look authentic in the scenes depicted in the photos, which were just after her character had been abused by her fictional husband rather than hot Mr. Baldoni, however, appeared focused on Miss Lively's sexual appeal above all else. His lengthy outburst caused a delay in shooting, forcing an emotional scene to be shot haphazardly. To make matters worse, when Miss Lively tried to have a meeting with Mr. Heath and other producers to discuss Mr. Baldoni's behavior, that meeting turned into yet another violation. So it was saying they walked in on her when she was not fully clothed. Miss Lively reluctantly agreed, but asked that Mr. Heath keep his back turned. A few minutes into the conversation, Miss Lively noticed that Mr. Heath was staring directly at her while she was topless. When she called him out, Mr. Heath brushed it off as a habit of wanting to look at a person while speaking to them. Miss Lively and her hair and makeup artist were all deeply disturbed by this interaction on just the second day of filming. So if this were to go to trial, you're just thinking like, oh my God, the witnesses... You know, you're calling makeup artists, actors, all of this stuff. But they said they would continually go into her trailer uninvited when she was breastfeeding, often breastfeeding. Mr. Baldoni also routinely degraded Miss Lively by finding back-channel ways of criticizing her body and weight. A few weeks before filming began, and less than 4 months after Miss Lively had given birth to her fourth child, Miss Lively was humiliated to learn that Mr. Baldoni secretly called her fitness trainer without her knowledge or permission and implied that he wanted her to lose weight in 2 weeks. Mr. Baldoni told the trainer that he had asked because he was concerned about having to pick Miss Lively up in a scene for the movie, but there was no such scene. Because that's what we had heard, right? That Mr. Baldoni only did that because he had a back problem and he was trying to like figure out the weight and how to properly lift her. That's what we heard. I remember that story being pushed out, which was probably by them to combat this shit. And by the way, this happens all the time with female actors. Of directors like, you've seen it time and time again, right? Of people pressuring women in film and TV to look better, lose weight. You know, these stories are a dime a dozen. It's horrible. When Miss Lively caught strep throat, Mr. Baldoni offered a gift to connect her with an expert he had on retainer to help her with probiotics and to combat the sickness. When Miss Lively went to fill out the privacy forms, she saw the expert was not what Mr. Baldoni had represented her to be, but was instead a weight loss specialist. So he tricked her by using her strep throat. Also, that they failed to implement COVID protocols. And that the next part of this talks about Miss Lively and others lodge grievances against Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath, which Wayfarer, the studio, which they're the heads of, declined to investigate. So they weren't doing their due diligence as the company because they're in charge of the company and they're also the day-to-day on-set representatives. Wayfarer, Mr. Baldoni, and Mr. Heath received or were aware of a number of HR grievances regarding their conduct. For example, on the first day of filming, while attempting to hug Miss Lively's employee, Mr. Heath said, "I don't even know if we're allowed to do this. It's day one and I have an HR report already." Seemed like they were way too jokey about this shit. But I would also be curious about how many HR complaints are filed on a typical film set. I mean, I remember working on film sets back in the day, especially when I first came out here as like a extras casting director. Dude, you want to talk about seeing some wild shit go down. Not with like the main actors, but like just with the extras. I mean, anyways, Early in the production, another actress made a complaint about Mr. Baldoni's comments on her appearance. Mr. Baldoni expressly acknowledged her concerns in writing, stating he would adjust accordingly. Yet on June 8th, that actress informed Miss Lively that outside of anything in a scene, I actually cannot talk to Justin at all. Mr. Baldoni later expressed suspicion regarding Miss Lively's friendship with this actress as if they were colluding against him. I wonder if this is Jenny Slate. Jenny Slate is one of the other actors in this film. I'm curious. Anyways, saying they just weren't addressing all of this behavior that was being brought by people, not just from Miss Lively, but from other women and people on the set. And that they were not following COVID protocols. The next section, the parties negotiate a contract writer regarding Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath's conduct on the set of Ends With Us. So this is what started the whole legal document about that meeting, about returning to production. Because Blake was like, this is bullshit. I'm not coming back. Like, we've had this time off. We need to come back and have an intimacy coordinator. We got to get all this shit focused, figured out with my nudity. I got to know what I'm doing. I got to know when I'm touching, what I'm touching, all of that shit. We got to have rehearsals. We got to have everything. And it goes over each of those provisions, the 30 provisions that I talked to you guys about in the very beginning of this. God, I wonder if that in-person all hands on deck meeting was filmed. It's got to have been filmed, right? You would imagine it would have to be filmed. So production of the film resumed on January 5th, 2024 and concluded February 9th, 2024. Where are we at now? We're in, what are we in 26? No, we're at the end of 2024. So this is where the cast and crew, we're going to promote the film according to the marketing plan for the film. We talked about they wanted to focus on the strength and resilience as opposed to the story of domestic violence. We want it to be a story of hope that people can go see. Mr. Baldoni publicly embraced the marketing plan set forth. In early May 2024, Mr. Baldoni appeared at a floral-themed trailer launch event, which included him personally making flower bouquets for influencers, a photo opportunity, and a film brand latte art. I was not invited to this. As late July 25th, 2024, Mr. Baldoni appeared at a pop-up of Lily Bloom's flower shop in Century City, California, where he held a long-stem rose microphone and playfully gave tours of the shop to influencers. In a TikTok interviewer posted that day, Mr. Baldoni excitedly walks through the pop-up and states that he will be giving tours all day, every day until August 9th. In advance of the release of the film, nearly all cast members chose to appear in public separately from Mr. Baldoni, given his on-set behavior. So the rest of the cast did not want anything to do with Mr. Baldoni as well. Mr. Baldoni became concerned that the public would discover that something is much bigger under the surface. I wonder if he ever acknowledged to himself that he was at fault for this. I mean, we'll never hear that from him, but I wonder if he acknowledged, if this many people... At that point, Mr. Baldoni pivoted away from the film's marketing plan to explain his absence from the rest of the cast. He shifted his focus away from a message of female triumph to instead capitalize on female trauma. After the film's premiere, Mr. Baldoni changed his Instagram profile, canceled lighthearted and social media posts, and instructed his team to look for survivors' reactions and support, all in an effort to quickly shift his own public narrative to focus solely on survivors and domestic violence organizations. And you can see this on social media, the people that he reached out to that are really disappointed right now to have read this part of the documentation. Now, the PR person, Miss Abel, cautioned Mr. Baldoni that this shift might be too drastic too soon. Still, Mr. Baldoni insisted on a TikTok strategy that his promotional activities for the film should seek to amplify what he described as survivor content. The team followed Mr. Baldoni's instruction. For her part, Miss Abel concluded, it doesn't feel performative now that you've done major substantial press on this topic. So, Justin was doing good at this. By repositioning Mr. Baldoni's marketing of the film on information and belief, Mr. Baldoni hoped to create the false impressions that he had chosen not to appear alongside other cast members. So he was like, you know what? I'm the one delivering this actual really important message, so I'm going to remove myself from the lighthearted conversations that the rest of the cast is having. I'm the director. This is my message to carry. Mr. Baldoni directed his team to share on his public Instagram feed the private messages he had received from survivors sharing their stories of domestic violence with him. Mr. Baldoni's team talked him out of this idea, writing that they do not recommend using private DMs as content. Mr. Baldoni went so far as proposing to share a video of a woman's birth moment, but his team talked him out of it, warning that it might be perceived as weird and was too intimate. See, that's the thing too. Even if this makes all sense to Mr. Baldoni about like, ladies' birth moments and all of this stuff, it's weird to other people. Like, it's just because you feel like you are so evolved doesn't mean everybody is at where you're at, the world you're living in. Mr. Baldoni and his team formulate the retaliatory plan. And we've talked a lot about this. This was covered heavily in the New York Times article from part 1 of this podcast. And it goes over those things of like, I want a plan in place. We can't have fans starting to guess why Justin Baldoni is left out of this stuff. Mr. Heath. Abel texted Mr. Heath. Likewise, Mr. Baldoni strategized with his publicist, Miss Abel, about various ways in which they might cover up or explain away his on-set misconduct. For example, Mr. Baldoni proposed an offensive move showing his neurodivergence and some of the attributes that come with it to explain that anything he had been accused of was social awkwardness and impulsive speech. So he pulled a Tamara Judge there. He was like, listen, I'm neurodivergent. That's what really happened here. And that's what's causing me to be weird on set. The same day, Miss Abel reviewed again the agreed-upon list of protections that formed the basis for the contractual rider. Miss Abel emailed Mr. Heath and others requesting the legal letter was sent to Miss Lively and her team stating, per our conversation, we will go through point by point and draft context surrounding each situation. We can then flag what we are missing that would be helpful to arm us in the case we need to refute any of the claims. On July 26, 2024, Mr. Baldoni sent Miss Abel a Variety article about Francis Ford Coppola's inappropriate behavior on set during production of the movie Megalopolis, including his alleged kissing of the cast and crew and described by unnamed sources. In conveying the article, Mr. Baldoni stated, this is the shit that I'm sure they want to do, unnamed sources, etc. Which, by the way, look at that article, the Francis Ford Coppola, like, the guy's a legend, did Godfather, all this stuff, but, he was acting creepy on the set with a bunch of extras. On July 29th, Mr. Baldoni and Miss Abel discussed a proposal to get ahead of any potential publicity regarding Miss Lively's HR complaints against him with a social and digital combat plan. Okay, so now we're ramping up to them carpet bombing and smearing Blake Lively. So this part of the court document starts getting into the team that we've already covered, but the team, they were like, hey, we got a badass mission. Let's put this team together, which already included Miss Abel, Justin's PR representative, and Melissa Nathan, who is a crisis manager. On or about June 20th, 2024, Miss Nathan launched the Agency Group PR. TAG is what it's known as. TAG, the Agency Group. TAG markets itself as a team of crisis specialists and communications experts that redefines the rules of reputation management. In their website, it states, at TAG, it's more than just creating a powerful narrative. It's knowing how to navigate that narrative towards continued success and a lasting legacy. Now, either TAG is about to fully shut down forever, or they're about to get a lot of business from a lot of really bad people. Allegedly. TAG website states that it offers comprehensive communication services for individuals, businesses, and corporations looking to invest in reputation management and the growth of their unique public profiles. TAG specializes in crisis communications, having managed some of the biggest public-facing crises to date, and utilizes that fast-paced reputation-first mindset with all of its day-to-day clients, which span a variety of industries, including entertainment, media, business, and sports. TAG's services include messaging and narrative development, media relations, crisis communications and management, and digital and social strategy, among others. By July 31st, Wayfarer had started to put together a timeline of events to be shared with Miss Nathan and TAG. According to TAG's own planning document, the purpose of Miss Nathan's engagement was to help Mr. Baldoni get ahead of the narrative and mitigate the bad press that might arise from Miss Lively and others' HR complaints becoming public by engaging in techniques such as rapid response communication system and a cataloging third-party advocates willing to provide a potential quote or engage with reporters on Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath's behalf to mitigate negative narratives from a source outside of Wayfarer. Man, I've been really blessed. And also, I mean, like I always want to look at positives of anything I watch, but like nobody's been like, can I depend on a quote from you saying that this show is good or this, like, but they were seeking these people out that could do a positive thing about Justin. August 5th, 2024, Mr. Baldoni sent Miss Abel a screenshot of a thread on X. This is what I was talking about with Hailey Bieber. The services already started being performed. They're providing pricing quotes ranging from $75,000 to $175,000 for TAG's crisis mitigation services. Miss Nathan explained the quotes as follows. Quote 1, $175K. This will be for a 3 to 4 month period and includes website, full Reddit, full social account takedowns, full social crisis team on hand for anything. Is there like a 24-hour hotline for this thing? Engage with audiences in the right way. Start threads of theories. This is the way to be fully 100% protected. Quote 2, $25,000 per month. This is for cheapskates. 3 months as it needs to seed, same as above. This will be creation for social fan engagement to go back and forth with any negative accounts, helping to change narrative and stay on track. Miss Nathan stated, all of this will be most importantly untraceable. There's a lot more to both of these quotes, but easier to discuss via phone in terms of capabilities, what I have personally experienced in and out of crisis scenarios. The Hollywood Reporter announced the retention of Miss Nathan and Tag on August 13th, 2024. The report stated in part, the news comes days after sleuths flooded TikTok with speculation about an alleged rift between Baldoni and his cast and crew, including co-star and producer Blake Lively, as well as Hoover. I gotta talk to Dumois about this. So then it goes into, the perpetrating the retaliation scheme against Miss Lively. On August 1st, 2024, before any of the cast sat down for interviews at the film's press junkets, Miss Abel stated to Mr. Heath and Wayfarer personnel that she had held in-person meetings with a contributor to People, Fox News, In Touch, and Us Weekly. Miss Abel explained that during the meeting, she had fully briefed the contributor of the situation with Miss Lively. Miss Abel stated that the contributor was armed and ready to take the story of Blake weaponizing feminism and assured Mr. Heath that the contributor will do anything for us. So these are these magazines and online websites that you get your stories from. They're already agreeing to write the story a certain way, allegedly. They talk about scenario planning documents being circulated. They wanted to prepare for anything. There are several potential scenarios at play, which we should be prepared for. Should Miss Lively and her team make her grievances public? Which is wild because, Blake Lively didn't make the grievances public. But this scenario planning document recommendation to get ahead of the narrative included suggesting misleading messaging, that production members lost their jobs due to Miss Lively's takeover and insisted upon involvement. Now, I remember this too. I remember going, oh, wow, she needed that cut of the film and she tried to wrestle. So it was almost presented of she wanted to be the real director of this film. She stole it away from this up-and-comer. Miss Lively involved her husband to create an imbalance of power between her and Mr. Baldoni. I saw that one everywhere. It seemed kind of believable. Miss Lively has a less than favorable reputation in the industry. Miss Lively had a clear, likely motive to bully her way into buying the rights for It Starts With Us, which is the sequel owned by Wayfarer and Justin Baldoni. The scenario planning document also states explore planting stories about the weaponization of feminism and how people in Blake Lively's circle, like Taylor Swift, have been accused of utilizing these tactics to bully into getting what they want. Now you have brought the name Taylor Swift into this legal document. They're saying this tag is saying, let's paint her out to be Taylor Swift before the Eras Tour when the Scooter Braun shit was coming out. When people try to destroy her, Kim Kardashian, Kanye West, we know all of those stories. So Mr. Baldoni read this document and he said, I'm not in love with it. I don't feel the protection I was feeling on the call. And this is when he was like, yeah, I want to, that he wanted them to say, we can bury her. And I've already said this many times. They're like, we can't put that in, we can, but we can't literally say that. Imagine that getting into the wrong hands. And it just shows kind of how devious these PR people, which, by the way, if you're a PR person listening, I'm a huge fan. Lay off me. Please. But it just shows kind of them going back and forth, almost gleefully at times. Or it looks gleefully. But they had a social combat plan in place. And they were reaching out to everybody. When media sources made direct inquiries regarding potentially unflattering stories about Mr. Baldoni, specifically Miss Nathan, Miss Abel, and their teams worked to suppress these stories. They would do something called quiet kill to kill these stories quietly. On August 9th, Miss Nathan sent Miss Abel 2 links to articles, one from The Hollywood Reporter entitled, "Did Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni have a rift over It Ends With Us? Sleuthing TikTokers think so," and one from the Daily Mail entitled "Disturbing Truth," truth in all capitals, behind why Blake Lively and her It Ends With Us stars are feuding with Justin Baldoni. The Daily Mail article reports on allegations that Justin Baldoni was chauvinistic and borderline abusive on the set and discusses this and other claims with respect to the film and its cast in detail. Ms. Abel stated to Miss Nathan, "I can tell you've done a lot of work here," and continued, "Nothing about being unsafe, fat comments, sexual." She concluded, "Thank fucking God." So this article, they knew was going to be like some bad things, but at least it didn't have anything to do with fat comments against Blake, sexual weirdness, nothing about being unsafe. So they were able to quiet kill that. On August 8th, Miss Abel stated that the situation had moved from just monitoring and scenario planning to Miss Nathan and me having to have an off-the-record conversation with outlets such as the Today Show. Miss Abel noted that because of Miss Nathan's relationships, those outlets were being kept at bay. Like, hey, maybe don't cover this story. On August 9th, Miss Nathan indicated to Miss Abel that she was on the phone with her sister, Sarah Nathan, a journalist at the New York Post and a contributor at Page Six. Shout out Page Six, and remarked that Mr. Baldoni's religion should be taken out from media coverage. She went on to state, and mostly something misogynistic. So his faith, Baha'i faith. It's just littered with examples like this. Miss Nathan, on August 9th, they were going back and forth saying, "All press is so overwhelming. We've confused people. So much mixed messaging. It's actually really funny if you think about it." So it's all working. Ms. Nathan further texted Miss Abel that the worst is over and that Mr. Baldoni likely would not be canceled, corroborating that the nature of the ongoing campaign was designed to harm Miss Lively and conceal Mr. Baldoni's conduct on set. So that's all working. The following day, Miss Abel stated that the narrative online is so freaking good and fans are still sticking up for Justin, and there literally has been no pickup of these 2 articles, which is actually shocking to me. But I see this as a total success, as does Justin Baldoni. "You did such amazing work." Miss Nathan responded, "So did you." Let's pat ourselves on the back. Miss Nathan texted later that same day, "The majority of socials are so pro-Justin, and I don't even agree with half of them." She continued, "I mean, that was just a lot of work, just talking everyone off the fucking ledge for those 2 pieces." Miss Nathan followed up again, texting, "He doesn't realize how lucky he is right now. We need to impress on him just how fucking lucky. The whispering in the ear, the sexual connotations, like Jesus fucking Christ, other members feeling uncomfortable watching it. I mean, there is just so much." So here they are going, dude, this guy literally did so many creepy things that we've managed to keep out of this. He is so lucky. We did our creepy jobs, allegedly. The following day, Miss Abel confirmed to Mr. Baldoni that there had been nothing, very, very little pickup, and that fans believe the issue of the feud is because she took control of the movie. It really did sway that way. Earlier on August 9th, Miss Nathan had shared with Miss Abel that she had been informed, "We are crushing it on Reddit." Miss Nathan reference to Jed is a reference to Mr. Jed Wallace, who was hired by TAG, and he influences online forums. That's his job. We talked about it in part 1. The same day, an employee of TAG texted a link to a salacious story about Miss Lively's family and noted, "The tides are swirling around Ryan Reynolds now, FYI." Along these same lines, the team had previously shared an upsetting TikTok video which called for Blake to divorce Ryan, writing, "You guys will love this." TAG then described this post as very helpful. On August 10th, Miss Nathan stated to Miss Abel that the socials are really, really ramping up. She continued, "It's actually sad because it just shows you how people really want to hate on women." The same day, a member of the TAG team advised a shift on social due largely to Jed and his team's efforts to shift the narrative towards shining a spotlight on Blake and Ryan. Further, Miss Nathan and her team TAG helped generate or otherwise influence the content put forth by various TikTok account holders. During the same period of time, Miss Nathan, Miss Abel, and their teams were heavily monitoring, had friendlies updating them, and sought to address unflattering commentary regarding Mr. Baldoni while augmenting the spread of the stories that were favorable to Mr. Baldoni. For example, on August 9th, Miss Abel circulated a screenshot of a post by a woman stating, "Justin, the creator of a show called My Last Days, exploits the struggles of individuals facing terminal illnesses for his own gain. He found my friend who is battling a serious illness and followed her life closely. Despite her grace in not speaking ill of him, I sensed from the start that something was deeply wrong. Justin weaponizes therapeutic language, presenting himself as thoughtful and supportive, yet his actions reveal a very different reality. He portrays himself as an ally to women and the vulnerable, but it's all a facade. He manipulates the vernacular of care to mask his true intentions." But that's what is the true intentions here? That's what are the true intent? In reality, none of the proceeds from the show benefited the individuals he profiled. He even had the audacity to depict her hometown, a vibrant and affluent community, as a small, impoverished town. His portrayal was not just inaccurate, but insulting. Welcome to Hollywood. Once the show aired, Justin took his profits and vanished, leaving nothing but a sense of exploitation in his wake. His behavior was not just tacky and gross, it was a betrayal of the very people he claimed to uplift. In a response to the article, Miss Abel stated, I'm assuming that this is not true in the slightest. Either way, we flagged to Jed and his team for more serious action on the social side. So they saw this article come in and were like, no, we're flagging Jed. We're going to take care of this. The team discussed ways to use the digital team to amplify positive stories about Mr. Baldoni. On any occasion, any member of Wayfarer or the social manipulation team could text the link to a positive story about Mr. Baldoni or a negative story about Miss Lively and ask that someone boost the story to the public or engage in the comments to fuel the desired narrative. So this is just wild. It just shows, okay, we got this story out there. I need everybody on deck to leave a negative comment for this positive story about Blake. We need negative ones. Or, we need engagement. So these are all fucking people fueling the engagement that all work for these people. On August 18th, Mr. Baldoni circulated a TikTok video in which the poster criticized Miss Lively for not speaking about domestic violence in press interviews. A member of Miss Nathan's team responded that she would let digital know. During the same period of time, when media sources inquired about HR complaints that were made on the set of the film, Miss Nathan, Miss Abel, and their teams worked to suppress coverage of these HR complaints. Damn. Further on, or around August 14th, media outlets directly inquired about HR complaints made on set because they were being told that there were at least 3 HR complaints filed against Justin Baldoni on the set of It Ends With Us, and inquired if the complaints were investigated and what the results were. So they were like trying to report things, and they were being snuffed out. By this time, they were all aware of the existence of HR complaints and sought clarity to the specific HR complaints at issue in order to better counter them in the press. Like, you got to tell me what really happened so we can protect you. This is an email, Melissa, Nathan, and Jennifer Abel. Hey guys, regarding the TMZ thing regarding the HR complaints, our understanding is that 2 were from Blake and they were about the sexy comment. Is the additional one from, and they have it blacked out, regarding the thing with Jamie and her apartment in New York City? Just want to clarify. Approximately 1 minute later, Miss Abel asserted the need to position the claims as claims that were already out there, and that the kiss and the weight out there about the kiss and the weight comment, referencing earlier public reporting by TMZ on Mr. Baldoni's lingering kiss. So TMZ had already reported this. But they were like, no, we can position this. That's old news. On or around the same date, Miss Nathan directly engaged with several media platforms discussing the issue of HR complaints made against Mr. Baldoni while on the set of the film. On August 15th, Miss Nathan texted Miss Abel that DM hounded me regarding HR complaints. She stated that DM is not running any content about it continuing. Daily Mail. Jen, this went so well, I am fucking dying. I have to call you later in a bit and tell you how this went. It was genius. So, okay, we have the 4 majors standing down on HR complaint. I think we are fine on this bit. So they did their job again. They snuffed this out. During the same period of time, Miss Nathan and her team at Tag, Planted or otherwise, were involved in generating or influencing the content publicly put forth on social media, including Reddit and TikTok, as well as online media sources. For example, on August 13th, various text messages were exchanged between Miss Abel and the journalist Sarah Nathan. That's Melissa Nathan's sister. These messages consisted of drafts of a story outlining Ms. Lively's role in making final cuts to the film, which would make Blake look negative on Blake. On the same day, an article authored by Sarah Nathan titled Blake Lively Approved Final Cut of It Ends With Us Amid Feud with Co-Star Director Justin Baldoni. And that was published by Page 6, owned by the New York Post. The article addressed, among other topics, Miss Lively's role in approving the final cut of the film, but emphasizes how Miss Lively contributed to almost every aspect of the film, that her husband wrote one of the most important scenes in the movie, and that she was begged to remove one of her song choices from the film, despite Mr. Baldoni's ownership of the rights to the book via his production company, Wayfarer. The language contained in the article is almost a verbatim copy of the language exchanged between Sarah Nathan and Miss Abel via text. So Miss Abel literally saying, put this out there. Print this. Tag publicly shared this article on one or more social media platforms, including Reddit, prompting various negative comments in relation to Miss Lively and her husband, and the narrative that Miss Lively steamrolled or bulldozed Mr. Baldoni and the film for his own personal gain. The very same day, Mr. Nathan sent an article from the Daily Mail entitled, "Is Blake Lively set to be canceled? String of hard-to-watch videos that have surfaced tone-deaf Q&A to promote It Ends With Us could tarnish 36-year-old star's golden Hollywood image for good." I love how Daily Mail would all be like, could tarnish. Miss Abel stated, "You really outdid yourself with this piece." And Miss Nathan responded, "That's why you hired me, right? I'm the best." Following the August 2024 launch of Miss Lively's hair care line, Blake Brown, which is, I mean, listen, that's on Blake. I mean, to launch your hair care line the same month as your movie, which is all about DV, it's a bad choice, regardless of any of this. But, you know, what do I know? But it said she spent 7 years building this brand. The Instagram all of a sudden was flooded by harassing and derogatory comments, including many posted by user accounts that had no followers and no prior posts, suggesting inauthenticity in which did not relate to the brand's products. To take just one example, one comment posted on the Blake Brown account by a user that as of December 19th show user metrics indicating 0 posts, 0 followers, and 0 following commented, "How about you stop paying the media to trash and smear Justin? That would be a good start, you awful human being." Another user with 0 posts, 0 followers, and 0 following posted, "We want Justin's cut of the movie. He actually cares about DV." So these are all probably from them. Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Sarowitz, along with Mr. Heath, not only encouraged efforts to target Miss Lively and her family, but they went as far to provide input and ideas on ways to negatively influence the narrative against Miss Lively and her family. For instance, on August 9th, the film's release date, after sharing certain negative articles about himself with Miss Abel, Mr. Baldoni stated, "There's no way we can just let this go." Additionally, on August 5th, you can't put that rabbit back in the hat. Additionally, on August 15th, Mr. Baldoni texted Miss Nathan and Miss Abel stating that his business partner, Mr. Sarowitz, suggested flipping the narrative arising from unnamed sources who had made false claims about Mr. Reynolds' involvement in the script of the film, and suggested ways to manipulate those rumors to make Mr. Reynolds appear to be anti-feminist. There was no truth to these claims. So are they saying here that Ryan didn't actually rewrite any of the... Wow, interesting. Mr. Nathan assured Mr. Baldoni that this is an easy flip before indicating that she was already working on a story for Variety that would achieve this goal. As of August 16th, Mr. Nathan was continuing to confer with additional news reporters to release stories that would cast Miss Lively and or Mr. Reynolds in a negative light. Meanwhile, Miss Lively neither publicly commented nor directed any of her representatives to comment or engage with the print media, social media, or otherwise about the hostile work environment Mr. Baldoni, Mr. Heath, and Wayfarer created. Indeed, throughout the time period discussed herein, Miss Lively did not provide her publicist with details about the hostile work environment that she, alongside the other cast members and crew, had experienced. So Baldoni's has this whole crew of people working for him. According to this, she is not doing anything. So I wonder what made her decide to finally do something. I wonder if she had decided then and there, I am doing something down the line because of this. So he made it that much worse for himself because he actively engaged in this way, and she was suspicious of it. Miss Lively expressly instructed her publicist to not engage with press inquiries, including ones regarding the on-set behavior of Mr. Baldoni, Mr. Heath, or Wayfarer. Experiencing the very sudden tidal wave of the increasingly negative public attention building around her, Miss Lively began to suspect that the extraordinarily rapid shift in public sentiment and press coverage that began immediately after the rest of the cast and crew attended the world premiere was likely orchestrated by the men about whom she had raised HR complaints. There we go. That's what made her start this. On information and belief, Mr. Baldoni was desperate to suppress any suggestion that he engaged in inappropriate conduct, much less sexually harassing conduct, because it would entirely undermine his carefully curated public image as a feminist ally. Justin Baldoni presented a TED Talk entitled, in 2017, Justin Baldoni presented a TED Talk entitled, "Why I'm Done Trying to Be Man Enough." Mr. Baldoni challenged men to be man enough to stand up to other men when they hear locker room talk, when they hear stories of sexual harassment. Mr. Baldoni asked listeners, will you actually stand up and do something so that one day we don't have to live in a world where a woman has to risk everything and come forward to say the words, "Me too"? That sounds awesome, right? During the TED Talk, Mr. Baldoni displayed numerous screenshots of media coverage of himself from various sources as examples of his decision to use his social platform as a kind of Trojan horse wherein he could create a daily practice of authenticity and vulnerability. Mr. Baldoni then claimed, "The response has been credible, it's been affirming, it's been heartwarming, I get tons of love and press and positive messages daily." Around the same time of the TED Talk, Mr. Baldoni announced the launch of a male talk show through his media company Wayfarer Entertainment called Man Enough. Through the show, Mr. Baldoni sought to have public conversations on camera that he had never seen men have. In one episode of The Man Enough, Mr. Baldoni hosted a roundtable with really strong men, including Mr. Heath and others, in reaction to the Me Too movement, to collectively learn from others, from experts, and hear firsthand from women and try to figure out how we can be better allies in our responses and our actions. In the episode, Mr. Baldoni questions the group, who at this table has seen something and didn't say anything? I mean, objectification, harassment, and then not say anything. So he's asking the questions that they're alleging that he did on set. So, I wonder if any of the women that he was talking to Blake about that he might not have gotten consent from, I wonder if any of those people would come forward. Or, you know what? I'm just thinking back to that part of the document. In 2021, the Man Enough franchise added a podcast also produced by Wayfarer. The Man Enough podcast has featured episodes entitled Strength and Unity, Men Supporting Women in Leadership, From Misogyny's Victim to Male Privilege, and Modern Dating, Consent, Boundaries, and Respect. Mr. Baldoni stated in a 2017 TED Talk, men are the problem. Dingo. They created the glass ceiling, and if they want to be part of the solution, then words are no longer enough. By Mr. Baldoni's account, he became a feminist fighting for gender equality so quickly that he hadn't even realized that that's what he was trying to do. In Mr. Baldoni's own words, his activism starts in the mirror with an audience of one. Mr. Baldoni has stated that he feels a deep responsibility to tear down the walls of power and privilege and believes the world needs men to show up, not in big ways, but in hundreds of thousands of little ways to create a better, more equitable, just world. Over the past approximately 7 years, and as relevant to this complaint, Mr. Baldoni has made the following statements. Quote, let's just shut up and finally listen to the women in our lives. Oh man, this document's burying him. Quote, men are going to have to start doing now is recognizing when they made women uncomfortable and didn't realize it. I think that's when the other side of the Me Too movement is, I'm sorry. Quote, growing up, how many times did I hear bros before hoes? How demeaning, how sexist. We built this system, the opposite of accountability, and now it's time to figure out how, as men, we can break that system. And it starts with showing what a real man is. A real man is someone that says, hey man, we're still friends, but that's not cool. Quote, imagine being sexually assaulted, finally coming forward about this traumatic thing that happened to you, and having people acting like you were to blame. Oh, dude. Burying him with his own words. Quote, it's important for us men to realize how crucial a role bystanders can play in stopping and preventing assault and harassment, how we must be a part of the movement and call for respect and equality for women, act upon that call to action, and continue to perpetuate positive behaviors among ourselves and communities. Quote, are you confident enough to listen to the women in your life, and will you be man enough to stand up to other men when you hear locker room talk, when you hear stories of sexual harassment? Quote, all of us have a situation or a pattern that we need to end the cycle of. Quote, first of all, I want men to stop asking the question, why do women stay? I want men to take accountability. I want men to hold other men accountable. Quote, there's never an excuse, no matter how much trauma a man has. There is never an excuse to lay hands, hurt a woman physically or emotionally. And we have also to understand the majority of domestic violence isn't physical. The scars are invisible. There are things that you know, it's emotional gaslighting. It's all of the various things that so many people experience. Quote, I think we judge enough women and victims, but the real question is, why do we keep allowing men to harm? In sum, Mr. Baldoni has crafted a public image of himself not just as an ally, but a fierce advocate for women. Contrary to this image, as set forth in detail above, Mr. Baldoni has spent the last several months and significant resources on his goal of wanting to bury and destroy Miss Lively's for raising concern. Yeah, I mean, like the exact opposite. I mean, come on. I'm fascinated with what we're potentially going to hear from Justin Baldoni in defense of this. I mean, it's laid out so beautifully. I mean, how do you eat? I mean, this is all provable. Okay, the next part. Miss Lively, her family, and her businesses have suffered and have been substantially harmed by Wayfarer's party's conduct. So now this is like, look, there are damages here. You have fucked me and you fucked my businesses and you almost fucked Ryan Reynolds. Okay, so we're in the home stretch of the documentation, but now it's about like the damages that she's seen, not just her career, but her businesses. They have all of these kind of graphs saying the spike in volume of negative sentiments towards Miss Lively included notable spikes on approximately August 8th and 14th and continued to trend mostly negative for the remainder of 2024 since August. Indeed, as noted above, TAG itself noted a shift due to their efforts as clearly as August 10th. As of that date, the sentiment towards Miss Lively turned toxic, with a sudden increase in negative comments, including hypersexual content and calls for Miss Lively to go fuck herself. That's the literal quote in the paper. Nearly decade-old interviews of Miss Lively were surfaced, commenting on her tone, her posture, her diction, her language. She was criticized as being a bully, a mean girl, and controlling, and was criticized for allegedly marginalizing Mr. Baldoni, among many other things. Articles which members of the Tag and Joneswork team working on behalf of Mr. Baldoni and Wayfarer credited themselves with influencing, dissected Miss Lively, and contemplated her cancellation. Talking about posts in Page 6, Newsweek, New York Post, TMZ, BuzzFeed. Content from low-influence sites was often linked or referenced in articles on these high-influence platforms. So they're taking a smaller bit and they would put it on a bigger site to get awareness. So the social manipulation campaign engineered by Mr. Baldoni and Wayfarer helped create and sustain negative news cycle and social media algorithm around Miss Lively. The online narrative continues to trend more negatively as compared other weeks and months prior to the social manipulation campaign. Yeah, so they have this graph showing June 14th to December 19th. Now, June, there was like real positive trending for Blake Lively. But then you get into August 9th, it just all turns negative with little blips of positive starting in the end of October. But like little blips, it's all negative. But this is what they say, this is what Baldoni Wayfarer hope to achieve. Unlike Wayfarer and Mr. Baldoni, Miss Lively has been precluded from not only experiencing the success of the film, because remember, it was a success, but also from having the ability to engage further with her business's fans and social media followers without immediately triggering an onslaught of hateful comments. So she said she can't go about her normal social media. I don't follow her on social media, but she can't go about her normal way of posting because it will start the hate campaign up again. And all of this, once again, as pointed out, was intentionally seeded, cultivated, and financed campaign against her by the damn studio that hired her. Was this I bet this was offer only. I bet this wasn't an auditioned part for Blake. But anyways, it just says it was immediate and substantial in the damage. For example, Miss Lively canceled a critical Target corporate event for her hair care company, and she backed out of her scheduled role to host the premiere episode. She was going to host the premiere episode of the 50th anniversary season of Saturday Night Live in September 2024. Instead, Gene Smart from Hacks was on, but it was originally supposed to be Blake Lively. I thought that was an interesting fact. It said it damaged her companies. The long-planned launch of her hair care line, Blake Brown, a date which was set more than a year prior to the date selected, not by Miss Lively, for the release of the film, was caught up in the crossfires of the negative environment against Miss Lively. So she was saying, like, the date selected was a year before for the launch of this hair care line, before they even knew the launch date of the film. Ms. Lively was informed that Blake Brown was Target's largest hair care launch on record. Based on internal sales projections, the sudden and unexpected negative media campaign launched against Ms. Lively depressed retail sales of Blake Brown products by 56 to 78%. The dramatic drop-off was completely at odds with the high satisfaction scores that Blake Brown products received. So saying the brand, the products itself tested well, but so this is where you get into some real weird things where you're talking real damages that Justin and Wayfarer could be found liable for, I think. At the same time, the social media accounts for Miss Lively's brands, including Betty Buzz and Betty Booze, that's her alcohol brands, were flooded with hateful comments, which were echoed everywhere. And this was part of the Astroturfing campaign. She limited her comments on Instagram to limit the toxic harassment she was receiving. Those users simply migrated to the social media accounts and websites of Blake Brown, Betty Buzz, and Betty Booze. So they're like, okay, well, we'll go over and leave a hateful comment on your products pages. The emotional impact on Miss Lively has been extreme, not only affecting her, but her family, including her husband and 4 children. There are days when she has struggled to get out of bed, and she frequently chooses not to venture outside in public. While she has fought to maintain her personal life and business interests behind closed doors, she has suffered from grief, fear, trauma, and extreme anxiety. She also has been experiencing repeated and painful physical symptoms as a result of this experience. Mr. Ryan Reynolds, too, has been affected mentally, physically, and professionally by his wife and children's pain. Worst of all, however, has been the impact on their young children, who have been traumatized, emotionally uprooted in ways that have substantially impacted their well-being. Oh my God. There's going to be a lot of money potentially at play here. These are but a few examples of the substantial harm caused by the malicious campaign. And they just make another point of, like, this all started with Miss Lively trying to speak out to have a better work environment and then they sought to destroy her. So that is like the end, but then they have these exhibits in here with just like, like fun little addendums that you need to know about. It's just about the film, the legal rights of the film, the promoting the film, the protections we read at the beginning of this podcast about what it would take for Blake Lively to return to the film, those 30 addendums. You have the contract with Blake for her acting and what she is responsible for with that, signed by Blake. So you have all of these things with the letter. You have the marketing campaign for It Ends With Us, talking about what the film's about, what to avoid in the promoting. It says, like, avoid talking about the film being representative of every woman's story. There are many stories of domestic violence, and this is just one perspective that is inspired by Colleen Hoover's own experiences growing up. And then in the marketing plans, it says, only if asked, any questions about the story not being an authentic representation of domestic violence, say this is just one perspective that is inspired by Colleen Hoover's own deeply personal story of growing up in Texas. So the marketing plan tells you how to handle questions if they get through. Any questions about the lack of diversity in the cast? Answer something like this. We have such a wonderful cast who all bring something unique in telling the powerful story of one woman learning to take agency over her future. I'm so proud to be part of an incredible group of women who have to make this film and that is inspired by Colleen Hoover's own deeply personal story. So the studio, this is Sony, saying this is how you market it. This is how you respond if you're asked these questions. And then in this, the scenario planning that they got their hands on from Tag and Justin Baldoni, what they were all going to do, how they were going to respond, the messaging points. This thing is wild. And we talked about the majority of this through the course of these 3.5 hours. How long has this been? 3.5 hours? But it really is a very interesting look into how this is all put out in writing. Oh, God. Talks about post-premiere coverage. Talk about scenario 3. Ryan comes forward in defense of his wife. This is interesting. It said, should Ryan come forward in defense of his wife, we would advise against any direct engagement statement. Inquiring reporters and those in need of updating would be given a pre-approved line of background attributed to sources, implying his lack of connection or involvement with the making of the film, and that this is another imbalance of power in an attempt to strong-arm production by major A-list stars. So you got that big major A-lister Ryan Reynolds trying to interfere. So this is if Ryan Reynolds stepped forward for his wife. So this is why I think they knew pretty much immediately that what was happening to Blake, because Ryan remained pretty quiet. Blake remained quiet. Like, they kind of knew, and they were just like, we'll take all the hits. But if Ryan had come forward, they already had a plan against him. You can't go against Deadpool. That's wild. They plan for everything. And that's the part of it where they brought Taylor Swift into it. And that, folks, is the end of this document. Only a quick hour and 41 minutes. Now, Ryan, you're crazy. You did 2 parts of this thing. I'm getting bored with Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. I get it. But the story's not done yet. There is a part 3 of this podcast that I will be working on. If not tonight, it'll be in the morning tomorrow, where it takes you after the release of this, of what we've found out since, all the support, what Justin Baldoni's doing, what the next steps are. And I think that also is a real fascinating piece of the story. So stay tuned for that. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast, and your podcasting app will let you know when it pops up in your feed. But I hope you're having a good Saturday. Good to talk to you guys. I'm a little Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni'd out myself, so I need to take a break and do a Patreon about Vanderpump Rules, the proper way to clear your head. And also, if you get a chance, leave a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Ooh, my voice, I'm feeling it. Okay, bye.